A 5.9 magnitude earthquake has shaken Colombia. So far, there are no reports of casualties. Electricity workers in France left the Olympic Village and the Stade de France without electricity in protest against the pension reform. And also, the National People's Congress unanimously elected Xi Jinping to a third term as China's president and chairman of the Central Military Commission. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Welcome. An earthquake of magnitude 5.9 hit northern Colombia on Friday. The country's seismological center reported the quake was at a depth of 90 kilometers, and its epicenter was 33 kilometers east-southeast of Florida Blanca. It also stated the epicenter of the tremor was located at the Mesa de los Santos in Santander in the northwest of the country. The place is a plateau in the eastern mountain range in the Santander's Massif and is considered the second seismic center in the world. The strong earthquake woke up in the South American nation and could even be felt in neighboring Venezuela. In the meantime, disaster management agencies are currently evaluating the damage, especially in the places where it was felt the hardest, such as the city of Bucaramanga. And Venezuela held the Bolivarian Anti-Imperialist Day to denounce the signing of the so-called Obama Decree, which described the South American country as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the United States, paving the way for Washington to impose unilateral sanctions. For on this occasion, a meeting was held in Caracas under the title Venezuela, Unusual and Extraordinary Resistance. Several Latin American leaders participated in the gathering, such as the former president of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, the vice president of the United Socialist Party of Venezuela, Diosdado Cabello, and the president of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez. At the event, the three leaders denounced the multiple conspiracies carried out by the White House to destabilize and overthrow the Bolivarian government. The politicians also pointed out that all aggressions against Venezuelan territory have been defeated. In the framework of such an important date, they also condemned the hold-up of the country's assets abroad and insisted in the need to activate mechanisms to destroy imperial hegemony. The president of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, pointed out that the government of the United States took advantage of the illness of Commander Hugo Chavez to try to destabilize democracy in Venezuela.
Chavez was an opportunity, while the people of Venezuela, while the Bolivarian Revolution was with the commander, fighting the greatest electoral battle ever experienced by these people, which was the electoral battle of the year 2012 for the presidency of Commander Hugo Chavez. Surely there were already executive order drafts. Surely there were already files made. Surely there were already bureaucrats in the United States saying this is the opportunity to charge the Bolivarian Revolution for having established itself as the first libertarian revolution of the 21st century, and for being an example for the peoples of the world who fight for freedom, for independence, for sovereignty, for the right to manage their resources as they please.
In Costa Rica, a trade union meeting was held in defense of the social democratic state after the attempt to weaken public services. The trade union headed to the Ministry of National Planning and Economic Policy to stop the enactment of the public employment law. The different unions meant to design the process to keep the law from being passed and to address the tax evasion deficit. Trade unions authorities reported that on March 29th, another rally will be held together with the National Horticultural Corporation over the sector's crisis. The Peruvian court approves the 36-month preventive detention requested by the prosecutor's office against former President Pedro Castillo. Castillo's corruption case was heard by the Supreme Court of Investigation, which delivered its verdict in spite of the defense's allegations and its request that the former president continue the process in freedom. This is the second pre-trial detention for Castillo, who has been held in Barbadillo prison since December under alleged rebellion and conspiracy charges. Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Thursday, the French Senate approved the key article of the pension reform bill that raises the retirement age from 62 to 64. The result was supported by a majority of right-wing parliamentarians who, with 201 votes, gave legal status to the progressive raising of the retirement age. The initiative, promoted by the President Macron, also establishes that in order to obtain a full pension without discount, the required contribution period will increase from 42 to 43 years as of today until the year 2027. In order to be implemented, the initiative still has to be agreed by the two chambers of parliament, for which they have a deadline of March 26. This article was approved despite the massive demonstrations in several cities of the nation by different social sectors that reject the pension reform promoted by Emmanuel Macron's government. And also on Thursday, French electricity workers left the Olympic Village and the Stade de France in Saint-Denis without electricity to protest against France's pension reform. According to the CGT union, the action, which also affected gas supplies, is part of protests against President Emmanuel Macron's plan to push back the retirement age from 62 to 64 by 2030 and to increase the contribution required for a full pension. Unions stepped up their pulse on Tuesday with extendable strikes and more media actions after 5 days of peaceful mass protests in January and February failed to get the government to back down on its unpopular reform. As of previous days, the strikes continue in several sectors, particularly in public transport and energy.
It is a symbolic action because for 2.5 months now, more than 90% of workers and more than 70% of French people have rejected this counter-reform, which will bring the entire French people to their knees. The government refuses to hear, refuses to apply democracy and the majority of the people. One vote, one decision. And so today, what we are saying is that they are working against the general interest of the French people and the country. And so we, at our modest level, try to act to actually force them to respect the will of the people.
It is truly a reform that is unfair and unjustified, and that no one today really understands why the government persists in wanting to pass it. So I repeat it loud and clear: withdraw your pension reform and the public energy service will resume its activity in the best possible way. In any case, our responsibility, we will take it to the end. And for us, as long as the reform is not withdrawn, the actions will rise crescendo tomorrow, after tomorrow, and until the withdrawal.
At least 7 people have been killed and 25 wounded after a shooting in the northern German city of Hamburg. According to several media reports, the shooting took place at Jehovah's Witness Center in the Dilburg Street shortly after 9 p.m. local time. Hamburg police tweeted that a major police operation was underway and that they were urgently investigating the background, the identity of the attackers, and their motives. A police spokesperson said several streets had been sealed off and the public warned by text message to avoid the area. Local residents were told to stay indoors and only to use their phones in extreme emergency, so as not to overburden the network. In recent years, Germany has been rocked by several attacks by far-right extremists due to its participation in the anti-Islamic State coalition in Iraq and Syria. Now we move on to other topics. Russian Defense Ministry spokesperson Igor Kinashenkov claimed that all targets have been hit during Russia's retaliation missile strike on Ukraine in response to its recent incursion in Russian Bryansk region. Kinashenkov also claims that during the strike, Ukrainian UAV bases were destroyed and the transfer of reserves and transportation by train of foreign equipment were thwarted.
The goal of the strike has been achieved. All the targets have been hit. As a result of the strike, UAV bases were destroyed. Transfers of reserve and transportation by train of foreign equipment were thwarted, as well as facilities for repairs of military equipment and production of ammunition have been put out of service.
And during her regularly scheduled briefing, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova accused France of trying to maintain its exclusive influence in Africa and exclude Russia and China from the region. Zakharova also said the forecast for the UN and the Turkey-brokered grain deal is pessimistic unless both parts of the package deal are fulfilled.
Dreams of maintaining exclusive influence in Africa and excluding all the participants, primarily Russia and China, are still alive in Paris. This is obvious. Paris still determines for itself the selected African countries where it is ready to turn a blind eye to military coups and numerous violations of human rights, as long as they blindly follow the official course of France. We are doing everything we can to ensure that the two tracks, the two directions of the deal are fulfilled. In this case, the forecast is optimistic. If it continues to plummet indefinitely in terms of not fulfilling the second part of the deal, then the forecast is pessimistic.
TeleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat. Dial 461 and enjoy our Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. On Friday, the National People's Congress unanimously elected Xi Jinping to a third term as China's president and chairman of the Central Military Commission. The nearly 3,000 members of the National People's Congress, China's parliament, voted unanimously for Xi after the constitution was changed to remove the traditional two-term limit for the past. Xi Jinping's 5-year re-election as head of state comes after the Chinese leader managed in October to extend his term as head of the Communist Party and the army, the country's two most important leadership positions. Born in Beijing in June 1953, Xi joined the Communist Party at the age of 22. In 2012, Xi was elected secretary of the Communist Party, and the following year, he became the president under the promise of fighting the prevailing corruption. Currently, his biggest challenge will be to deal with the incessant and growing tension with the United States, especially regarding the Taiwan situation. Local authorities reported a shooting in the streets of Tel Aviv, Israel. 3 people have been wounded. The events took place in the Dizengoff Street in the center of the city in the night of March the 9th. It was the beginning of the weekend in Israel. There were also some rallies against the government of Benjamin Netanyahu. Israeli police called it a terrorist attack. One of the attackers was a man of Palestinian origin. As a result of the injuries sustained during the shooting, 3 people were taken to the hospital. Pictures and videos of the incident have been circulated on social networking sites. Moreover, hours before the shooting, the Israeli armed forces killed 3 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. They were killed in the town of Jabba near Jenin. The Palestinians were young men. They were aged between 22 and 26. In Tunisia, coastal authorities said 14 migrants have drowned and at least 54 have been rescued after a boat sank off the country's coast. The boat carried the migrants that sank in the coast of Sfax, central eastern Tunisia. The Coast Guard recovered 14 bodies of migrants and rescued 54 others. The shipwreck comes at a time when many migrants from sub-Saharan African countries are seeking to leave Tunisia after Tunisian President Kais Saied made some remarks against illegal immigration. After this speech, nationals of sub-Saharan African countries reported an upsurge in attacks against them and rushed to their embassies to be repatriated. According to official figures, Tunisia has more than 21,000 nationals from sub-Saharan African countries. The majority of them are in a regular situation, which is less than 0.2% of a total population of about 12 million. A new incident of violence was recorded in Nigeria after at least 37 fishermen were killed outside the village of Gugo. According to a preliminary report, a dozen fighters believed to be with Boko Haram insurgents opened fire on a group of fishermen who were sorting their day's catch on the bank of a river near the village of Gugo. Subversive groups have reportedly attacked villagers to rob them or because they accuse them of spying for the army or the militia fighting against them. So far, neither the army nor the local authorities have commented on the attack. According to the United Nations, at least 40,000 people have been killed and more than 2 million have been displaced from their homes since the insurgency began in 2009. The violence has also spread to parts of neighboring Niger, Chad and Cameroon, prompting a regional military coalition to fight the militants. And Nigeria's election commission has postponed the West African nation's March 11th governmental election. An official announced late on Wednesday, citing logistics challenges. The election for new governors for 28 of Nigeria's 36 states will now be held on March 18th. This decision will also allow more time for voting machines used in last month's presidential and legislative elections to be reconfigured and deployed for the upcoming vote. The gubernatorial vote is part of Nigeria's general elections for 4-year single terms for major political positions, including last month's presidential vote won by the ruling party's Bola Tinubu. That outcome is being contested by the opposition. Ahead of the gubernatorial election, a local court on Wednesday approved the electoral body's request to reset the bimodal voter accreditation system. On Thursday, the 5th United Nations Conference on Least Developed Countries concluded in Doha, Qatar, with a call for recovery, renewal, and resilience. In a joint statement, the participants expressed solidarity. Also, they committed to adopt socio-economic measures to promote transformation and unlock the potential of the least developed countries. Support measures will aim at enhancing the participation of the least developed countries in international trade and regional integration. Finally, they included a design with different strategies for mitigating multiple crises, maintaining food stocks, and building resilience. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.